Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Beyond Max Q. I'm your host, Mollie Jahner. I am joined today by Tom Andrews, the CEO and founder of GCH Technologies. He is over in the UK, and so it's late, I believe, there for him. So I appreciate you joining, Tom. He is doing some very cool things with his team. They're a brilliant team of engineers and scientists doing some really cool work in the drone and aerospace communities. And so with that, sir, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about GCA.
Sure. So my name's Tom Andrews, as mentioned, founder and CEO of GCH Technologies, and we build AI solutions and ML solutions for other people's stuff. And so we do the software components for any bits of hardware that people have to try and get more out of them, and either reduce the cost of and the quality of components required to get the job they want done, or get more out of, so they push the edge on the performance of what they can achieve with their existing stuff.
hmm Well, and I've had the privilege of being able to kind of dive into some of your products a little bit more deeply. I would love for you to
Yeah.
talk about especially TrueSight.
Sure. So, TrueSight was a fun one. It was one of the things I think is wrong in the thinking between, and there's been this huge push into defence from the various political events that have cascaded spending and government spending, and that has seen a gold rush of people joining from civilian to military.
Mhm.
And they've said, hey, I've got these great civilian sort of visual applications, I can use them in a military context.
Mhm.
And we strongly disagreed that I think there are some underlying assumptions for that. Typically, again, it's the classics that have caused the bane of military sort of detection, which is the survivorship bias and the very limited access to data you'll have, which again is not randomly
Mhm.
generated in the slightest. And so what we wanted to come up with was, and I'm a huge believer in AI assistance rather than AI decision. And so we wanted to assist super
Sure.
users to be able to make the decisions themselves, and I guess fill in their weaknesses. And one of the big weaknesses, which is a challenge for all the frontline and the end users, is it's very unlikely that you're just engaged for 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever is your optimal human attention span. You're flying a drone for hours, you're on shift, or you're flying five drones during the time you're on there, staring at the screen for
Mhm.
12, 20 hours a day. You're going to miss stuff. Um, and so what we wanted to do was, rather than say, oh, look, here is a tank person, I know exactly what I'm looking at, is, I think this is of
Mhm.
interest to you. Have you seen this? And it's a gentle highlight in real time that says, I think this object is of interest. You can then go and either use
Mhm.
the detection identification tools autonomously yourself further to try and figure out what it is. But it's a very,
Mhm.
and I'm assuming that we will likely blend it in with our detection and other tools that we built, um,
Mhm.
to fill in those features. But that kind of, you've seen it. I think it's a very useful highlight that someone can put on and then go, hang on, have you seen this?
Well, and I love that, and I think you're helping people in the field. It's for the warfighter, and I love that you're building for that purpose. Hey, you could be staring at a screen for 8 hours and you're going to miss something. This helps you. It assists you, like you said. Can you talk a little bit about your other products and how they kind of complement TrueSight?
We've got a screen cleaning one that takes away interference, and
Mhm.
interference could be anything from a raindrop on your camera lens to a bit of mud or grit on a lower level camera. It can be missed pixels, and missing pixels from interference in the feed if you're not physically connected to the camera. So
Mhm.
that one is able to sort of fill in the blanks and we don't use generative AI. It is all from real information used
Can
to
you
sort of
talk
fill
about
in.
why you don't use generative AI really quickly? Because I think that's important.
So, oh yeah, yeah, yes. So it comes back very much to the civilian versus the military use case, which I think
Mhm.
there are some underlying assumptions that it's that, and it's to provide the information provided to the warfighter must be 100% true. And it's the very, very small things that, if you
Mhm.
start, I'm sure generative AI wouldn't miss it in 99% of the circumstances. The headlines will never ever reflect that.
Mhm.
People do not get medals or disciplinary hearings as a result of 99% of the things they do in life. And it is making sure that that one time, and if people are understanding that AI is, or generative AI is being used, then you can start playing the system. As we've seen, that problems with companies with hundreds of billions of dollars in funding have been plagued by people messing around with generative AI outputs.
Mhm.
And that's one things where it's civilian use case of the vast amounts of training data in a conflict scenario. And the world, it has been at war for quite a while. When you're not permanently at war, you do not have that experimentation phase to find out everything that's going right and wrong. So that's why we don't use
Yes.
any
Well.
generative AI. So that has been that's a popular one. The other ones I think are detector and tracker. We specialize, and don't ask me how we do it because I'm not going to this share. But we specialize in very, very small object detection and tracking.
Mhm.
We've it took in the formation of the company. It took about 2 years for us to build the
Mm.
behind the scenes stuff that enables us to crank out the product of the speed and quality that we're happy with and our customers require. And so picking up genuinely a couple of pixels consistently with
Mhm.
very, very little noise and false positives has been and similarly detecting objects that we don't have training data for
Mhm.
is also a massive thing, because it's again similarly back to the um to the point of civilian versus military. If, for example, Ukrainians want to go and see some new Russian asset in the field, well, if all your stuff
Mhm.
relies on AI, you need about 1,000 pictures of this thing coming at you, which
Mhm.
means that you're eating whatever it's sending at you for a long time before you're able to push those updates and be able to detect autonomously. And that just cannot be acceptable. And so you needed to have a different way of doing it. And that's part of what we built, which enabled the detection. So TrueSight detection tracking, GNSS denied navigation. That's one that we're proud of. It's been, but has been easily the hardest thing to get commercial engagement with,
Mm.
purely because of the amount of noise in the market.
Sure.
And so, but we can do very low level navigation with a forward facing camera. And we are, as a software business, we don't do hardware.
Mhm.
So we use whatever sensors you've got on board, um, the drone itself, plug it into the computer, and it will tell you where you are at any altitude,
Mhm.
time of day, and over or near land, you will know exactly where you are. So that's been another a popular one, but it easily took this longest to get off the ground.
Well, you said it took 2 years, right, to build some of these? What was that
Yeah,
process like? Because you didn't have revenue, right, at that point, so it's like you as a founder, because this podcast is all about founders, like, 2 years is a long time to bootstrap.
yeah. So for the full context, this is not my first business I founded. I founded a different previously. That went pear-shaped is the British way of
Mhm.
saying it. There was a disconnect when I was reflecting back on that with, hang on, I was meant to be running that business, but I wasn't,
Mhm.
because the investors had control and influence. And so a bunch of things happened that I didn't think should have happened. And that's nuts.
Mhm.
I've got a very clear vision for what I want this to build. So, and I don't want anyone that they can suggest things, sure, but there has to be one hand on the wheel.
Right.
And so it was important to me that we were bootstrapped and to get to a place where I'm very happy to take on investment. And as I've mentioned, I'm looking to consider it at the moment. But it was 2 years till we had even had a product to show to people,
Mm.
let alone anything else. And then after that, it was a year or so, year and a half before customers started paying us, although they were very engaged.
Mhm.
It's just that's a long cycle. So there's two. So one is my co-founders, and they can happily speak about the nature of the agreement at that time, which is, guys, I don't know if you're the right fit for taking this business all the way to the end, and I don't
Mhm.
have any money to pay you with, because we're kind of just building something. We're building the machine to build the machine. We don't know if that's going to work at all. So I
Sure.
don't know if it's going to generate any value. So I can hand you a bunch of promises,
Mhm.
but it will be lying to you if you're sitting there holding on to those promises thinking they're going to be worth something definitely, then I'm lying to you, and I'm not going to do that. So it needed the guys. They worked unpaid with just a commitment of, if
Mhm.
this works out, you'll do well, and I won't abuse the fact that you took this chance on
Yes.
us as well. and didn't. And then the other person, so that is the, I guess, the behind the scenes one, and it was my wife, who, as a senior FANG employee, had some RSUs saved up. Well, and the keyword there
Yes.
being had, which is what resources and as everyone
Your
knows,
first
I mean,
investor is your wife. I love that. And that's important. I mean, you have to have people to support you, right? She's a VC. She doesn't even realize it.
this is I really really love the word partner.
Yes, I
It's,
agree.
I guess, my definition of partner is basically a differently skilled and perspectived extension of yourself,
Yeah.
because you have to have that level of trust. And I think when people would say, "I wish I had that level of trust with someone,"
Mhm.
be that person. It's say be that person and see how they react. And my reason for being, I don't want to say it's radical candor, because I don't think that's that's constructive, saying like you're an idiot. I'm not agreement, but explaining smart people the facts and letting them understand why you're doing something, how it's going to be, and if something seems a little bit positive, actually say how this could go wrong for them proactively,
Mhm.
and being
Mhm.
very transparent, because at some point I'm going to need them to really, really believe me and trust me. And if you have a complete track
Yeah.
record of being perfectly honest, that's going to be so much easier.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, Cecilia, my wife, there was, and as every founder knows, that so when we thought, okay, we're on to something, customers are interested. I thought, right, so we're going to get revenue within 3 6 months. All right, let's go full time on this. I'll start covering salaries, investing in compute cloud costs, all that yada yada yada. 18 months
Yep.
later. So the conversation with my wife was, honey, we need to start using our sort of our rainy day fund savings for this. It'll just be a few months. And then 18 months later, I mean, unless someone is a keen gambling addict or just has that level of trust with you that this could be something that they were willing to back you. And it's also not just challenging, rather than just
Mhm.
saying, okay, here's like, let's transfer more of our rainy day fund. It was actually having some pressure. If you're sitting there thinking everything's great, I'm really relaxed, something is very badly
Mhm.
wrong in you. And it's a very sad realization for me that that will always be true. Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing how stewardship matters, right? And I think sometimes like the way that we've talked about this, like the VC world, it's easy to spend other people's money. It's so much harder to spend your own, and you just take every decision even more seriously. And I think that we've lost that a little bit in businesses. And then, like you said, we have these
Yes.
wild parties to become unicorns. And are we building something that someone wants? Are we taking care of our people? And are we being sustainable? And we haven't, I don't know that those questions get answered in modern day
It is.
businesses.
And I like very simple definitions and things. And like for me, leaders eat last. Everything else just falls out from that. Um,
Yep.
and I don't mind people doing one or the other, but I do object to them saying, because everyone likes to say they're a leader. But
Yes.
if you look at every leader you've ever acknowledged as great or even slightly good, it's that
Mhm.
they've eaten last.
Yes, that's
And
exactly right.
that if you want people to follow you, trust you, and I guess, yeah, it's follow you into battle, it's to
Mhm.
know that, and they'll get that resources can be high or low at some point, but you are going to
Mhm.
prioritize their needs over yours.
I love that answer, and I think too, like, when we're thinking about building a company, you've made it, you've got partnerships now, you're doing biz dev. Can you talk a little bit about being super technical, but also forging partnerships for all of the other super technical founders out there? Because I think that would be very helpful.
Yes, something that so my history before this, and I will, I guess, just to give people, I guess, either hope or false promise on this, depending on how your story ends up. But the um, building an ML AI business in the defense
Mhm.
sector. I have 0 years of military experience, and I cannot write code. So, however, I will not let someone tell me what I can and can't do in life.
Mhm.
If it ultimately comes down to because I wanted to, but then being pragmatic and honest enough with myself about what can't I do, which is quite easy to say when you can't do AI and you can't code,
Yep.
and you're not allowed to just wander around a battlefield and have a look at what's going on and speak to the end user. General founder, I think something that was is if you are deeply technical within one vertical, then there is quite a shallow limit on the value that you're able to add commercially to anything because there's bluntly a lot of people like you and the I guess the range of possibilities that of where you're quite constrained and you're quite unscalable and
Mhm.
if your individual vertical is large enough, you're not going to be the first one in it. So you're either
Yes.
at that point taking you're almost the first person to be an expert in a very small field that you think will grow massively, in which case either well played
Mhm.
or well or lucky you. It's being able to bridge the other bits and join up with other people's those verticals and sitting across those. And you don't
Mhm.
need to know the technical. So what I am very involved in product discussions, and the guys will, I will, I don't even, I'll wind them up by suggesting technical aspects to it. But I'm like, in terms of how it works, I do have a very deep understanding of that. I can then talk to
Mhm.
the customer and understand what's the problem. And
Mhm.
annoyingly in defense, people say specifically what they need, trying to be vague about the problem that they're actually solving. But if you understood the problem a little bit better and you can kind of guess sometimes
Yes.
what it is, you're able to start saying, hang on, that connects with this and this,
Mhm.
pulling those together and not annoying your tech team by asking them to do the thinking for you. Because I
Yes.
need them to be deep specialists in their areas
Mhm.
and they will naturally be curious enough to enjoy the other bits and then they generate ideas and options themselves. But you need to be able to steer them in the right and they explain to the customer and the right customer. I think someone told me once about like in any organization, it's about 20% of the people working there in
Mhm.
the larger organizations. This is actually really care. And if you find
Yes.
that person and you have a product based discussion with them, you get magic. If you're able to pull in multiple areas of merged thinking,
Uh,
I think that the power of your product and the value it will add will magnify significantly. So if you're really good at your area, go and learn about other people's areas and get
mm.
to, so you might be PhD in your area, get to just before undergrad in other people's areas.
Yes. No, well said. I love that. Well, and I wanna ask you because you touched on defense tech. So, I would love to hear your thoughts since you've now, like, been in this world for the last 2 years. Defense tech, working with different countries'
Yep.
militaries, you know, what are your thoughts on, trends, things that you're seeing, or even just some like, "Hey, I learned this, don't do this," or any red flags you can share with the audience?
So the controversial one, the Ukraine conflict has, I think, really distracted people and
Mm.
may and the natural fear of missing out. This is oh, could we stop that? Um, doesn't really apply. I mean, that there's and it is so we've been chasing and going after, and I think one of like the big challenge that you hear is well, I
Mhm.
guess no one talks to you for an ask is that they want the cost of a successful mission to be less than this, which is ultimately what it matters. And you measure that in money and time, and maybe there's some scarce variables and
Right.
risk for life. I've never ever heard that. And so you say, oh, the drone needs to cost less than this. And it's
Mhm.
like, yeah. And then you get into a world where people are not trying to make the best product they can, and as a result, and I have a feeling that a lot of people in the valley and those that invested in them have
Mhm.
backed things that look hopeful
Yes.
and chucked a lot of money at it, and the world's moved on a little bit, and they're left holding some extremely expensive things which don't have an
Mhm.
immediate market use, and it's really hard to prove and say like the product that you'd love to back is the thing that says, "Oh, well, this hit 5,000 targets or defended against 10,000 drones, but like to
Hmm.
get to that scale is obviously the chicken leg of investment. But I think it's gone. I think it's gone very wrong. Much of that at all. Um,
No, that's really good
so,
insight. We usually keep these fairly short. I would love to ask you, what are you currently reading? That's a question we always end with.
so the last I read lots of. I'm a quite a keen video gamer. I read lots and lots of theory and optimizations
Okay.
for the games that I play. Actually, that's my equivalent.
Okay,
And the other, I guess, the other bit
what's
is
your favorite one?
Factorio and Satisfactory when it's not that close. For those that don't know, if you know them, you'll know them. If you don't, it's automation and scaling up and things that make technically minded people happy. And I guess it's
Okay.
close to crack cocaine for them. But I think it's the Shopify let you buy Factorio as a company expense. It's like they acknowledge that is that good, and it is. So
That's fantastic. Well, this is a totally different answer. I love that. Some people say, "Oh, I'm reading to my kids," or "Oh, I'm do audiobooks." It doesn't always have to be a business book. So I think that it's fun to get different answers from different people. So, is there anything that you kind of want to end with, or tell the audience, anything about GCH that maybe we missed, or about yourself or your team before we end today?
So we are looking to hire, and the only criteria we give are intelligence, integrity, and curiosity. And so you can always contact me at tom@gchtechnologies.com. And if you think what we do, we don't shout out too much about what we do. Our customers know, so don't judge us by the website, please. The Yeah, we're looking to hire and it's going very well. If you think what you could do add, or you've got some questions on how we could help, I love giving back as much as I love receiving help and advice from other people.
Okay, great. Well, I'll link everything in the description, as I usually do. And thank you so much, Tom. If you are in the market for anything that, especially if you're hardware, looking to optimize anything in that nature, especially if you have like driving, if you have vehicles, things of that nature, I think some of the things that Tom is creating are incredibly, incredibly exceptional, and they can help out. So please check it out. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Tom. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.